My name is Bill Stirling, and we're, of course, at Explore Booksellers. It was founded in 1975, so it's in its 44th year of existence. And it's really become an iconic institution. And one of the sponsors today is the Explore More Book Club. And in each seat there was a little flyer which describes what the club is about. And for $25 you can become a member, and then you get a discount on after so many purchases of books. And that money goes into kind of a rainy day fund for the store, and also for special projects, because bookstores are not known for throwing off gigantic profits. And so what we're trying to do is keep this wonderful, wonderful institution alive and well. And I'd like to acknowledge a few people who are here today. Carino DeVore is here with us, and she is one of the founders of Aspen International Mountain Foundation, which is her effort to combine mountain communities all over the world, and she's working with the United Nations to do it. She is in large part responsible for helping to bring our two speakers today. And she's also a co-founder of the Friends of Africa International, and I don't know if Scarlett Adams is here today. Is she with us? I don't see her. She's a co-founder, and she's in town, and she's going to try to get by to join us today too. But before we're going to begin with the program, which will be my introducing them and a visitor from the Aspen Institute, we're going to do something unique. We're going to start with a song. And we have a local singer and an accompanist who are part of the Aspen Valley and of the Paonia Valley. And if you all would come forward, let's welcome them. And they'll sing a song here at the beginning, and then they'll sing one as we go out at the end.
Hi, I'm Hilary, and this is Ben Bailey. We're going to sing a couple songs for you today. Thanks for having us.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you care. No need for greed or hunger. Brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one.
What a perfect song in many ways to begin this event with today, and Teddy was in part responsible for helping to choose that with Hilary Doyle and her accompanist, Ben Ailey. Thank you all very, very much. I mean, that was what his grandfather stood for, and the City Council today has proclaimed today, July 8th, 2019, Nelson Mandela Day. We're also very lucky today to have with us Elliot Garrison from the Aspen Institute, who is in charge of the public policy programs. And he's also a former Rhodes Scholar and in charge of a lot of the organizing of the Rhodes Scholarships around the country, named after a rather infamous fellow as we all think about that in retrospect. But one of the most prestigious of those kinds of awards that are given academically in the country. And tomorrow night, Elliot should be doing what I'm doing here tonight, because he's a master as a moderator, an interactor with people in the same spirit as Walter Isaacson and the current president of the Institute, Dan Porterfield. Tomorrow night you could hear him at the Greenwald Pavilion interacting with Dr. Fukuyama, who is an expert in the social values of the world. And they're going to be talking about populism, polarization, and national identity. Does that sound familiar to any of you all? At any rate, he's going to say a few words of welcome and some experiences that he had with Ndaba's grandfather. Elliot, welcome.
Well, I think I can sit and see some new faces, old friends. Bill, it's really, I didn't expect to be asked to speak. It's an honor just to be here, and it's an honor to be with you. Really, one of the great privileges of my life was getting to know your grandfather. And it was in connection with my role with the Rhodes Trust. One of the extraordinary things about Nelson Mandela was that his spirit of reconciliation, which really was extraordinary and made possible the end of the horrors of apartheid and the birth of the great Republic of South Africa, continued in his later life about many other things. And I think we all wish we had more leaders like him in any country. I don't think there was any greater leader one could imagine. But I first got to know him in I met him at a couple of occasions, but then got to know him rather well when we had the crazy idea of creating a scholarship for Africans who were really suffering because of the quality of public education in Africa. And it was not just, he wanted it to go beyond South Africa to all of Africa, and to overcome some of the legacy of poor Bantu education, and to allow, especially overwhelmingly, black Africans to have the same kind of benefits that white students from very privileged countries in the world had with things like the Rhodes Scholarship. And our crazy idea to set up this scholarship was to see if he would lend his name to a scholarship that also had the name of Cecil Rhodes in it. And of course, for those of you who don't know, Cecil Rhodes made his fortune in South Africa, in what was then the Cape Colony, and was really a British imperialist who shared the values that most imperialists had at the time, and certainly not values that we can respect in the 21st century, to say nothing of the latter 20th century. But he was a great man with a great ambition and a great vision. And Madiba, as all of those who really loved and respected Nelson Mandela called him, felt that it was in fact very appropriate to lend his name in pairing with that of Cecil Rhodes to establish this scholarship. And to this day, it's called the Mandela Rhodes Scholarships. and we offer many of them each year to outstanding Africans from all over the continent. And quite a few of them now have gone on to win Rhodes Scholarships to go to Oxford as well. And so it was just one little example of the spirit he had, and you know, and he didn't even hesitate. He thought it would be a wonderful thing to combine the name of someone perceived really appropriately in his time as a racist with, you know, perhaps the greatest person, you know, I certainly ever had the opportunity to meet. And it's that institution has thrived ever since. But then I also getting to know him this way, got to know, you know, just more about what an extraordinary man he was, and also just his sense of humor, his spirit. I mean, he was both a hero and someone who appreciated all kinds of regular things. As a matter of fact, my last long conversation with him was about, you know, bringing soccer to Africa, and in connection with the World Cup. He loved soccer. Football, of course, as he called it, and thought that it too could be a force for bringing the world together. So I've already taken too much time, but I just want to say it's a real privilege, and I think his legacy will live on forever, just as a great man of extraordinary values, and someone that, frankly, the world has let down, because very few leaders since Mandela has been anything close to him in terms of his values, his leadership, and his human spirit. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Elliot. Really appreciate that. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce our two speakers and give them each a chance to interact together with me and to speak to you all. You'll see behind that there is the book called Going to the Mountain, and that's what the book signing will be all about after we end this session here. And you'll get a chance to buy that book up front and then come in and have Ndaba Mandela sign it. Ndaba, is that the way to say it? Ndaba. That's an interesting, it's two consonants together that we don't normally expect to find, a diphthong, you know, and in Swahili, the word for cow, ngombe, ng, you know, those are tough things to say, so we're going to do the best we can with those. So at any rate, Ndaba Mandela is an author, he's a mentor, he's a spokesperson, he's an entrepreneur, and he's a grandson of maybe, along with Albert Schweitzer, maybe one of the two defining figures of the 20th century. And he's was born in Soweto, and you all have heard of Soweto. Some horrible things have happened there, and some of the largest black African communities live in Soweto and around that. And he wrote a book together with Joseph Peter first, which is called The Book of Happiness, Africa. And then he co-founded the nonprofit, which is called Africa Rising Foundation, and he found that with Kwaku Mandela, his cousin, and that was founded almost 10 years ago. And its purposes are to work and attack the whole HIV/AIDS problems and challenges in Africa, the challenges with youth unemployment and education. And he was recently recognized as one of the 28 men of change. And you'll soon see when you hear him speak why that's true. Recently, this past winter, he received the Dream Award from the Martin Luther King Community Service Award, it's called, in New York City, which is an incredibly prestigious and important award, and it goes to someone who has worked on nonviolence, reconciliation around the world. So in his recent book, the lessons from, I would say, the lessons not from the myth Nelson Mandela, but from the man Nelson Mandela. And so with him is his collaborator and colleague and co-conspirator, and he's the president of the Nelson Mandela Leadership Accelerator, which is designed to attract and mentor and lead and perpetuate Ndaba, as Eliot said, Mandela's legacy. And he's also a writer. He's writing a book on Nelson Mandela also himself, and will be part of this discussion today. So we'll begin with Ndaba Mandela today, and he's going to read a couple passages from the book. But before you do that, Ndaba, now I've got a copy right here. But let me begin with just a question to you. You know, I grew up in the apartheid southern United States, in Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, and from 42 to 64, and the first chance I had to get out, I left forever. And so, Ndaba, is South Africa still an apartheid state today?
Let me first of all say thank you to every single one of you for being here today. No, it is not an apartheid state because we defeated apartheid in 1990, as you know. Today, our biggest challenge is the economic challenge. We have got political emancipation. However, our people still are struggling behind when it comes to the economy. Hence why we dedicated ourselves and our organization to tackling youth empowerment, because we believe that if you empower the youth of today, you will create a better country tomorrow. So we thank our forefathers, our grandfathers, who were able to break the physical chains of apartheid. However, today, we fight against the mental chains that exist on our people. Here I am in America today, and you talk about the American dream. Big car, big house, white picket fence, 2.1 kids, right? But that is not the dream of young Africans across the continent of Africa. They want to go to a decent school and receive good quality education. That is their dream. They want to have decent living and have decent clothes so that their integrity can be maintained. This is what we are fighting for today. Economic emancipation.
What inspired you to write this book, Ndaba?
Well, last year, we were celebrating 100 years of Nelson Mandela. And so I thought I needed to pay tribute to my grandfather. And so I wanted to write a book about him. These are pretty much memoirs because I wanted people to understand Nelson Mandela from a different perspective. We know about Nelson Mandela, the president, the revolutionary. But what was he like as a human being, as a grandfather, right? And how do I make sure that the legacy of Nelson Mandela does not get lost in those generations that knew him, but continues in the new generations? We can all relate to having a grandfather who used to talk about, oh, I remember back in my days. You know, we used to do it like this back in the days. Oh, you kids don't know nothing. Right? So that is the perspective I wrote it from. Going to the mountain has two meanings. One, in our culture, between the age of 18 to 21, you must go to the mountain in a seclusion area to get your foreskin removed as a rite of passage from boyhood to manhood. And you are taught what it is to be a man. So the first step in being a man is to remove your foreskin. You cannot do it when you're young because, like, you know, maybe Jewish people do it when they're young. No, because you have to now learn what it is to be a man. So the first step is removing your foreskin. Secondly is having a wife and kids. And then now you have your home. I'm almost there. And secondly, we talk about the challenges that young Africans and people of minority groups face in them trying to achieve success or trying to reach that place that they want to reach. Majority of those are living in a ghetto area, in a marginalized community where there are There are bottle stores everywhere. The social ills, the gangs, right? So in that environment, they need to study and apply to university. Once they get into university, how are they going to pay for university? Once they pay for university, now you need to go to the marketplace and compete against your white privileged counterparts to get a job. So these are the little mountains that you go. As Nelson Mandela said, every time I climb a mountain and I reach the top of a mountain, I realize there are many more mountains to climb.
Ndaba. How many languages do you speak in Ndaba? Your primary language is Xhosa? English is your, okay. And Afrikaans.
No, Zulu and Sotho.
Did your grandfather want you to learn Afrikaans?
He did.
Why?
Well,
You might want to explain what Afrikaans is if everybody.
So Afrikaans is a language that was created by the Dutch settlers who came to South Africa. And it was a mix between English and Dutch language. And they use it locally. And they forced the black people to learn this language. And this is a language of great contention and has caused a lot of pain in our country. Now, my grandfather felt that I should learn the language of the oppressor because I would be able to be in a much better position to negotiate with the oppressor or our so-called enemy, right? He said, in order to defeat your enemy, you must work with your enemy because then he becomes your partner and maybe even your friend. How will you defeat your enemy if you don't know how he works, why he works, and does the things he does? So you have to work together. When Nelson Mandela was in prison, the wardens would get letters. Now, many of those wardens were young people coming straight out of school, didn't have great education. Now, by the time Nelson Mandela was in jail, he had taught himself how to read and write Afrikaans and became fluent. And so many of these wardens would get letters but couldn't actually understand what was being written in them. And so Nelson Mandela would take that letter and translate it for the warden. And of course, the warden would be so touched that now he's smuggling extra couple of blankets for Ndaba, smuggling extra couple of slices of bread for Ndaba, maybe a couple of extra oranges for Ndaba. And of course, when the authorities would find this out, they'd be, oh my God, what an abomination. And so they came up with the rule on Robben Island that no warden could guard Nelson Mandela for more than 3 months. Because if you stay with this man for 3 months, he becomes your friend whether you like it or not. And that is Nelson Mandela. Whether you are young, old, male or female, doesn't matter where you come from, he has a way to connect with the human spirit.
Would you read us a passage that you think reflects your inspiration for writing the book?
Maybe throw a question to Teddy.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay, why don't you do that? Teddy, tell us a little bit about what is Africa 2.0 and how is it and can it and will it affect Africa's growing development trajectory? And then tell us a little bit about what you're doing in New Mexico and a little bit about your writing.
Thank you. So,
Speak a little louder into the mic, right into the mic.
so I'll speak right into the mic because I'm very soft-spoken. And Ndaba is a little bit of the leopard, but I'm an indomitable lion with a heart and soul of a lamb. But I'm an indomitable lion. So let's proceed. So my name is Teddy Warria. I was named for Teddy, the Rough Rider Roosevelt, who was an American president. And also my mother liked Teddy Pendergrass, so they gave me the name Teddy. so those are my names. I am very pleased to be here today for 2 reasons. I came when I was coming to Aspen, the Resnick Aspen Action Forum last year. I met a wonderful lady called Naomi Swinton, who is director of Bartos Institute at the United World College. How many of you are familiar with United World College? How many are familiar with United World College? Okay, thank you. So there are about 18 campuses around the world that teach about peace, culture, and sustainable development from around the world. But to the question that he asked me, we used to run an organization called Africa 2.0, which means the second version of Africa post-colony, right? So there's a first version of Africa which my parents were, which was to get independence for the 55 African states. They did that remarkably well. So the next stage was to liberate Africa economically, right? I happen to be the 10th of 17 children from a polygamous East African family, and I also happen to have my father and my uncle. They went to Germany in the late 50s, and they happened to be so smart that actually one of the professors named my uncle Smart Rick Nolly Warrior. So he became one of the pioneering architects in Kenya. But most importantly, I found my way in the US in 2000, where I got a scholarship to come to the US. But by God's grace, I helped more than 100 Kenyans to get scholarships to come to the Ivy League schools. So 3 of my current partners at a company called Africa Stocking actually went to MIT on a full scholarship. One of them is Eston Kimani. The second one is Bill Handirango, who is our current CEO. And the second CEO had been Sam Gikandi. So they got full scholarships in 2001 because I figured out how to get people to MIT without paying a bribe. I'm going to repeat it again. I figured out how to get Kenyans to MIT in 2001 without paying any bribe, and they got full scholarships to go to MIT. Once I finished that, I got them to go and work in Wall Street in Goldman Sachs through a program called Sponsors for Education Opportunity, where they're earning more than $120,000 per year. So the basis of forming our company, Africa Stocking, we use $40,000. One of my partners called Sam Gikandi had saved that money to start Africa Stocking Limited, which is a pioneering tech company in Africa that has combined or unified all the telcos in Africa into one single platform. So, which is quite remarkable because it's never been done in Africa before. And to show the veracity of the new indomitable African lions, we were able to sell 10% of our company at $8.6 million to International Finance Corporation, World Bank arm last year. You could look it up anywhere in the newspapers from Forbes, from Tech Inc., TechCrunch. So our names are there. And we have the money that we earned legally with working hard, using our brains and ingenuity, and transferring what we learned in America to transform Africa once and for all. We don't want Africa to be called or considered a pariah state or pariah states year in, year out, and we happen to be the people who God made first, whether you dispute it or not. I happen to come from East Africa. The oldest human species have been found in Ethiopia. It's called Lucy. It was found by Louis Leakey. I happen to be a very close friend of Richard Leakey, Dr. Richard Leakey, who happened to have gone to my school called Lenana School. During those days, it was called King George VI, and I happened to have gone to that school. I was the top student, and I was also the top student in my primary school. So what I'm trying to say is that we're gifted, we're talented, we have what it takes to move Africa to where it used to be. Because my origins is that I happen to have come from Alexandria in Egypt and migrated all the way to Khartoum in the present-day Sudan, which has trouble right now, and they're working towards a permanent solution. Then we came all the way to Bahr el Ghazal in the present-day South Sudan, to Jinja in Uganda, then into Lake Victoria in Kenya. The reason why I'm saying this story is that when I was at UWC, United World College in Montezuma, I was deeply encouraged to write the story of my life. So I wrote the story of my life in a transcendent prose-like poem that is only 25 pages. And I'm going to release the book on 24th of July right here in Aspen during the Resnick Aspen Action Forum. So we'll send you an invite to come hear me speak about it. But in part of that poem, I wrote an important thing because I wanted people to understand the greatest and most famous Luo, whether people like it or not, happens to be President Barack Hussein Obama. If you doubt that, his father on his graveside is written Barack H. Hussein, died at almost 49 years old, but he signed one of the greatest American presidents ever. So that man, thank you. So thank you for that. But most importantly, also lately there's a lady called Lupita Nyong'o, who won the Oscar for playing 12 Years a Slave. Never done much of acting before, but came through to win this prize at a relatively young age of probably 31 years. What I'm trying to tell you is that I come from a people who have the best possible brains in the world. Whether people accept it or not, we'll continue doing our thing. Yeah? So that's that's part and parcel of what I can be allowed to say now.
Well, Teddy is a Waluo man, and two of the most famous people in politics in Kenya were first Tom Mboya, who refused to let the tea pickers be paid by going to the general store and be paid in food, and said they must be paid a salary, one of many things he did. And Oginga Odinga, the biggest competitor with Jomo Kenyatta, and now their sons are competing. No, they did. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Ndaba. Please.
Ubuntu is, in the old man's words, that profound African sense that we are human only through the humanity of other beings. One would like to think that this would be foundation to the ideas of politics, a word that comes from the Greek politikos, citizenship. But sometimes it's a struggle to connect the two, even for Nelson Mandela. But in the years following my father's death, his work made a noticeable shift towards social and cultural issues. He was keenly interested in the mindset of young people and enjoyed long conversations with me and his other grandchildren, but he was not as predictable as he was when I was a kid.
So the relationship between this grandson and his grandfather was profound. How old were you when you first really became engaged with your grandfather?
It was probably only after I finished university. You see, my grandfather is a very staunch African man, and he believes that kids are kids, mothers are mothers, women are women, and therefore a kid cannot guide me or give me any sort of guidance on anything, as a matter of fact. You have to earn your voice in the house.
But you were living with him.
I was living with him. I moved in when I was 11 years old, right? And as a grandfather, he'll tell you what to do, when to do it, and that's just how it is. Only once I had finished, I got my degree at the University of Pretoria, then he would say, "What do you think?" But before that, there's none of that. There's none of that. You have to earn your voice. My grandfather believed you have to earn everything, basically. Hence, when I was supposed to go to the mountain just after finishing high school, and he said, no, I can't go because I hadn't achieved the marks that I should have achieved. So I had underperformed, and therefore he stopped me from going to the mountain, and so I only went the next year. So I hadn't earned the right to become a man because of my poor grades at school. And in my culture, it has nothing to do with your grades, right? It's just about when you get to this age, you must go to the mountain. But my grandfather comes up with his own rules.
Ndaba, would you describe yourself as a rebellious young man up to a certain point in your life, and what might have changed that direction for you?
All I can say is that the apple does not fall far from the tree. I guess, what really hit home was being able to travel the world and those first times when we traveled to America, for example, I traveled here, I think it was the year 2000, and we went to Disney World, of course. And we're in the line, in the queue, of the roller coaster, trying to get to the front. And as we get to the front, there's a gentleman helping everyone get on the roller coaster. Take off your hat, take off your sunglasses, it's a roller coaster, etc. And he says, "Oh, so where are you from?" I say, "I'm from South Africa." He says, "Wow, South Africa. Tell me, how big do the lines get there?" And I'm just puzzled. I look at my cousin, I'm like, "Sorry, sir, I don't work at the zoo. I have no idea how big lions get." I'm like, "Okay." And then I travel to England and I meet another gentleman and it's, "Hi, how are you? And where are you from?" "South Africa." "Wow, South Africa. I heard it's a beautiful place. I would love to come and see a safari there. But I heard it's dangerous. I need bodyguards and many security to come to South Africa." And I say, "Sir, no, that's not true. My grandfather's the president of South Africa. I don't have a single bodyguard. I think you'll be just fine. I think you'll be okay." And then travel to New York, and another question was posed, and that's when I realized that people outside the continent of Africa have very little knowledge on Africa. And the little knowledge that they have is what is perpetuated by mainstream media. That Africa is a place of war, poverty, disease, and dictators. And the only positive thing being the animals, going on a safari. So I felt I was compelled to try and change this image, to break down these misconceptions that exist, to show the world there is much more to Africa than what you see on your TV. And I felt the best way to do that would be working with the young people and give them a heightened sense of pride and confidence in being Africans, so that when they travel and they meet tourists, they can talk about Africa with a heightened sense of pride. So they know their history, they know what they want to achieve. And ultimately, we can stand shoulder to shoulder next to citizens of the world. And that's how we chose youth empowerment. Because we know that breaking down the misconception of Africa is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a generation or two. That's why we need to start with the young people. And so that's when I started saying, this is my contribution to raising the spirit and the profile of Africa, so that we can be seen as global citizens and have a voice on that global stage.
So Teddy, how did you and Ndaba connect up? How did you become colleagues and collaborators?
Thank you. So in 2010, South Africa was having a soccer World Cup, and I had been nominated to be part of a coalition of the willing to transform Africa. And a friend of mine called Mamadou Kwijin Touré from Cameroon had walked all over the world to try and look for people he calls the Tribe One, because he's the men and women he believed he'll realize the Africa Rising or the African Renaissance. So he's looking for men and women to contribute and to be representatives of the Africa Rising. And at that time, America the whole idea of Obama Rising was happening. And I was a student here in 2007 still. And I helped and worked in the campaigns of Obama in New York when he was going against Hilary Clinton. It was a competition. One man won, another person lost. But when I went home, I said, I accepted to be part of the co-founder of the Africa 2.0. So in short, Ndaba here arranged for our founder, Mamadou Touré, to meet our leader and father, Nelson Mandela, Dali Bunga Mandela, and I believe he gave some financial assistance to the organization. So that's the first time I had contact with Ndaba or about Ndaba. But I met him in Nigeria, where we're doing our 4th symposium, and I believe I carried for him a Maasai belt, and he's wearing one proudly today. And at least for all that I'm wearing today, I try to wear African these days so that I can purchase things from African vendors and promote our economic development. So, but that's how I met him in the first place in Nigeria. And he's then since been a friend, a brother, and a collaborator, because in the African tradition, we don't have anything like cousin or aunts or these kinds of things. We say my mother's sister is my mother, my father's brother is my father, and so he's my brother. We believe in one united, prosperous Africa, hopefully by 2063. So Africa 2.0 was folded for now, for partly because in 2014, President Obama started something called Young African Leadership Initiative. So Africa 2.0 joined the consortium to run 14 African countries on behalf of President Obama's legacy program called Young African Leaders Initiative.
Ndaba, your future, is there a political role for you in South Africa?
Well, we have just had the resignation of Zuma last year. This year, we had Donald Trump come in. And so I believe that we cannot continue sitting on the sidelines and allow criminals disguised as leaders to continue leading our nations. We have to stand up.
Are you including Zuma in that?
That's the first one I mentioned. That's the first one I mentioned. That's the first one I mentioned. So, my friend, we have to pull up our socks and we have to go for it. We have to take the bull by the horns.
Would you be considered too young?
Right now, maybe, but 10 years from now, it starts now. It starts now. We need to have a 10 to 15-year vision. And I believe there's no other way for us, We are compelled. It is our responsibility. It is our obligation. This is our birthright. My grandfather, when I was about 13 years old, having dinner, said to me, Ndaba, you are my grandson. Therefore, people will look at you as a leader. Therefore, you must get the best marks in class. I was like, whoa, Granddad, whoa, the pressure. Hold on now, hold on. Best marks in class? No. I'm just trying to get by. But we realize as we get older, that people that put pressure on you are there because they love you and they see the potential that you have to become great. After all, it is through pressure that diamonds are created. Right?
It's a wonderful metaphor.
So, my friend, we are going for it. Nothing shall stand in our way. If at first we don't succeed, we shall try and try again.
Let's open it up to the floor for any questions. I'll just raise your hand, and in the back, Suzanne. Would you stand up, Suzanne, so we can all hear you? And just speak into that.
Ndaba and Teddy, this is a question for both of you. There's been an incredible amount of Chinese and Indian investment impacting South Africa, and I'd like to know your thoughts about this going forward.
The influence of China and India in South Africa, is it a positive event?
Well, I live in Kenya, and so I'll answer it briefly in the context of Kenya. I happen to have been very fortunate in 2017 to be invited by Jack Ma, who is the wealthiest man in Asia, to go to Hangzhou. I don't know how many of you have gone to Hangzhou. It's the beginning of the ICT Silk Road. It begins in Hangzhou, then to the rest of the world. So Jack Ma knew he was going to resign or retire from Alibaba in October 20th, 2019. So he wanted to raise about 1,000 men and women who are entrepreneurs from around the world so that they work with him around the world to take the message of building e-commerce. So he calls us the champions of e-commerce in the world. So what Jack Ma did that is a little bit different from America, he showed us the playbook on how he built Alibaba from scratch. So I lived in America from 2000 to 2010. No single company, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, nobody showed me their playbook. Not because they don't want to, but that's maybe how they do business. The Chinese believe in something called a shared economy, where everybody wins. It's not winner takes it all. So when Jack Ma taught me this, and he brought in also other young African entrepreneurs, he's been doing 25 young African entrepreneurs every other 6 months. So his goal is to raise 1,000 young entrepreneurs to work with him, but he not only gives you the playbook on how you can build a strong tech company, he also gives you the finance, and he also gives you technical assistance. So that's what the Chinese are doing right now. And as you probably all know, if you control Africa, it means you control the world. So over years, that's been the case. But right now, when I was engaging Jack Ma to help you understand the context of the cheetah generation, which Ndaba and I represent, I told Jack Ma the last time I met him in Rwanda that we're dancing. It's a dance. We're having a dance between China and Africans in the African savannah. And there's no way you can beat a Mara lion in Masai Mara. I hope you understand that. So that's the approach we're having to be able to deal with the effects of the rise of the Chinese and also the rise of the Indians.
My good friend Teddy, Jack Ma cannot be your only reference as it concerns investing in Africa. No, it cannot. No, it cannot, my friend. There are many Chinese who are coming into the country who are making deals that only benefit the Chinese. Now, those Chinese are coming in to build dams, right? But they bring their own labor force, and they bring their own materials to build those dams. Now, that does not benefit us because our labor force does not get the skills necessary in order for them to build, and we have many materials that we can use to build those very same things. Of course, like any country, we will go to look for money, and we'll look for the best interest rate for that money. If China is giving us the most favorable interest rate, then we'll go with China, right? But who are the people that allow the Chinese to come with these undesirable contracts? It's the ministers and the presidents of the African countries allowing the Chinese to do this. And there's no transparency because we know a lot of the time these Chinese are coming with big brown envelopes to give those officials who are in charge of signing those contracts. So for me personally, I don't think it's a bad thing. However, it is a bad thing if our leaders allow the Chinese to do as they feel and cutting out our brothers and sisters in terms of the labor, in terms of the materials that they use. That's where I stand.
Two interesting points of view. Other questions for our speakers today? Yes, please.
One of the things that I've had a question about your grandfather is, how did he stay alive? They murdered Jesus. They murdered Gandhi. They murdered Martin Luther King. What magic did he have that all these great ones haven't had?
Like you said, they killed many of the great leaders. And I have asked myself this question many a time. And as a God-fearing person, individual who believes in a higher power, that is the only place I look at, because they killed Steve Biko in prison. They killed Solomon Mahlangu, one of the greatest MK soldiers, and many others. So for me, I believe that God saved him because God knew that he had a special place in this world. And that's why he stayed alive.
Yes.
Thank-
Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your African experience, just in a nutshell.
Hi, thank you guys for being here. My name's Ellen. I was president of AMREF, the Flying Doctors of Africa, for a long time, based in Nairobi, but spent a lot of time in your beautiful country. And my question is, your grandfather was so well known for reconciliation and so brilliant at it. And as you know, we have a bit of a fractured country here right now. What can you teach us? What gems and lessons do you have for us? Since I think between Rwanda and South Africa, you guys have nailed it a lot faster in many ways than we have.
You know, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that took place in our country was,
What year was that?
that was from 92 to 94. It took the perpetrators and put them together with the victims of apartheid on the same table. And we told the perpetrators that you shall receive amnesty in return for your honesty. Right? We are not here to vilify you. Right? We are here only to get the truth of what had taken place so we can start addressing the wounds and the pain that your actions have caused. Why did you do it? Was it because it was an order? Were you part of a secret police? What happened? Give us the truth. And this here is to merely make an example to say, what I did was wrong. We want to acknowledge, and you yourself have to acknowledge that what you did was wrong. Because if me and you are in an argument, right, and I say, this is a book, and you say, no, this is a plate, then me and you are going to struggle to move forward, right? In order for us to reach a conclusion, we need to both be able to agree that this is a book. But if we can't agree that this is a book and you say it's a plate, then we have very little confidence, right, in each other in moving forward. So Truth and Reconciliation was there to everybody to acknowledge that what happened was wrong. Let us all admit, whether you're in Party A or Party B, that what happened was wrong, right? That's the first thing that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission wanted to achieve. And if that was wrong, how do we remedy this thing? How do we make sure that this thing never happens again? Is there a certain law that we have to put in place to make sure that if anything close to it happens, that we deal with it immediately, right? And this is the big white elephant that is happening, that exists here in America. Talk about slavery. Slavery has created billions of dollars for some of the most wealthiest companies that exist today here in America, right? And it's important that people understand that it's not about vilification, right? But it's about starting at point A in order for us to get to point D, as an example. It's merely a mechanism for us to find a way forward. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult. And it's not going to be easy. But if we want to build a better nation, a more united nation, this is what we have to do.
Thank you.
Teddy?
Thank you, Ndaba, for that. So I came with some visitors, and I just want to mention one if she's near me. She's called Naomi Swinton from the United World College. I actually wanted to, Naomi, just come out, please. So the reason why I want this lady to come out, and actually I'll stand, because when I was coming to Aspen last year, I sat next to this wonderful lady in a plane, and I was reading a book on Winnie Madikizela Mandela called 491 Days in Prison. So she asked me she got interested and asked me about the book or what I thought about Mandela and his lessons and his person. So I shared with her what I thought, and I told her that I knew this fine man and also his family. But what has resulted to that, she invited me to be a Bartos Fellow at the United World College, where I spent the last 6 months until June 11th writing a book called Mandela Warrior Moments, a tribute on Mandela's centenary by a young African. So I've been able to interview more than 3,600 people using technology to find out what did people think about this man, Nelson Mandela. So I've gotten incredible information about Nelson Mandela that I'll be sharing with high school, universities, young professionals, and even older people so that they understand the real Mandela, the human Mandela, and what made him tick. And given that they have 18 colleges around the world, I'll start it also with her schools. And also, there's a lady called Hilary Doyle. Maybe Bill, at some point, when you'd allow us to just read what she wrote. But the reason why I'm calling them here, I want to make sure that we personalize also Mandela. Mandela touches people from all ages, all generations, all races. She happens to be a Mexican, American, El Salvadorian. How cool is that? And she happens to go to a school called Mandela International Magnet School, and she's the student vice president for that school, and she's a bright future. Hopefully she'll go to Harvard, Smith, or any of the leading schools, but she lives daily in the principles and the ways of Nelson Mandela. So that's one. So these are two different generations and people, and for Naomi, she'd like to take this message of truth-telling, reconciliation around the United States, so that once and for all, we can deal with this monster that has been affecting the United States for more than 400 years. I happen to come from Kenya. I'm not a descendant of slaves or slavery, but I feel for my brothers, the African Americans, okay? So there's something I need to do. There's something Ndaba needs to do. There's something the United World College movement needs to do and will do. And there's something the Mandela School in Santa Fe will do. And they have about 18 people, young Mandelas who just graduated. And Ndaba and I are working day and night to create 100 Mandelas in the next 10 years so that we can have fine men and women in Africa and Brazil who have the habits of Mandela, the principles of Mandela, and who once and for all we want to free mentally, physically, and financially.
Can you read just a little part of that, if you think? Do you want to just say?
Yeah.
Well, just give us a feeling for it.
Okay. Well, I was trying to read the whole thing.
I can.
I can stop.
Just
Yeah.
give people a good sense of it. Okay. All right. Go ahead, says Ndaba.
Okay.
Ndaba's in charge.
Mandela taught me dedication is the key to your destination. Dear Nelson Mandela, my name is Hilary Rodas, and I'm American, Mexican, and Salvadorian. I attend the Mandela International Magnet School in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The school was founded in honor for the love you have towards education. I discovered a lot about you when I read the book Mandela's Way, Lessons on Life, Love, and Courage by Richard Stengel. Reading about these lessons has inspired me to apply them to my life. Love makes the difference is a lesson that I apply the most in my life. I want you to know that there is a program in Santa Fe that trains young Israeli and Palestinian women to partner as leaders. Through several skills like dialogue and listening, they learn how to transform anger and prejudice to mutual respect and understanding for one another. This program is called Creativity for Peace. Through Creativity for Peace, I recently started working on a project in peace studies titled Compassionate Listening with youth groups in Santa Fe. Compassionate listening is a skill used in conflict resolution, and the reason I started working on this project is because of your saying, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his religion. People must learn how to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. The Israeli and Palestinian citizens are taught to hate one another, but through compassionate listening, the young women are taught to love one another. Compassionate listening is the simple act of listening to someone. This gives them the chance to listen to each other's stories and hardships with an open mind and bring them to the realization that they are not each other's enemies. The government has separated their people into groups that hate each other, but I believe that through compassionate listening, hateful people can be taught to love. Learning about your leadership has helped me become a leader in my own way within my community. Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. You inspire me and keep inspiring me to learn about the world. My 4 years at Mandela International Magnet School have taught me and will continue to teach me how to have an international mind. I am a multicultural person that strives to know about the world in different areas such as religion, culture, the way of life, education, conflict, etc. Another lesson I have learned from you is how to persevere. It seems like you love to come up with nice sayings about life. While learning how to persevere, I came up with the phrase, dedication is the key to your destination. It simply means that if you work hard and dedicate yourself to something meaningful, it will lead you to your destination. This reminds me of your grandson, Ndaba. He once told me that I am the master of my own destiny, and it's true. A few questions. When Richard Stengel would ask you how prison changed you, why did you avoid his question for so long? What did it make you feel? Why did you feel that way? What impact do you think talking about your inner feelings would have had on you in your later life? To what extent would it change the way you reflected upon yourself? Nelson Mandela, I thank you for being another educator in my life and for teaching me the Mandela way. Maybe someday we can do the Ndaba dance together. With lots of love and gratitude, Sitlali Rodas. Thank you.
I would like to thank the former mayor and the community of people that support this bookstore. What an incredible resource and what a gift to the community. Teddy and Ndaba have been very inspiring to us at United World College. As Teddy said, we have 18 schools around the world. We don't have our institute is not as large as the Aspen Institute, but we do have a smaller institute called the Bartos Institute that is also working on dialogue and issues of conflict engagement. Our students are primarily full scholarship and come from more than 94 countries. If you have a young person in your life who's 15 or 16 years old and would like to pursue a life focused on social change and impacting the world in the way that this young woman is already doing, please consider encouraging them to apply to UWC, and I have a brochure for you. But thank you so much for the opportunity.
Just one thing. So would you like to come for a minute?
Just you all stand up and come forward. You came up from New Mexico.
So there is Fernanda, who is the baby sister of Sitlali. So for the longest time, I was struggling saying the name Sitlali. So I used to try and write X. Then my computer would lead me to Sitlali. But now I know how to pronounce it. And she's a sister, Fernanda. Her mother, Sonia. And the father, just come, please. And his father, Roberto. So Roberto works in Los Alamos, I believe. And he has an incredible story of also being an immigrant. And now her daughter is arrived in Aspen, not in just a generation after. So things are possible, and I hope America can welcome immigrants to come and contribute to America, or even if they're being employed to work, to do certain jobs, they're good people. So America, I think, needs to be focusing on bringing good people to America to do a cross-pollination of this great state, United States of America. I, by choice, went back to Africa because Africa was calling me. So I went back. And that's why I started a company called Africa is Talking. And I used to ask people, are you listening? But for now, I'm just joking. But for now, I want to say two important things. So I met Mr. Elliott last year during the Resnick Aspen Action Forum. He was wearing a colorful periwinkle shirt and a pink trouser. So, and he's as stylish as now. And he also gave me a very stylish Aspen Institute card, which has yellow, red, and green. So I still remember that. And I know I promised that I'll write to you to contribute a Mandela essay. So I'll still give it to you because you're still within the 100 mark before the centenary is done. But most importantly, I'd like you to work with Naomi Swinton in the program called Weave the People, and so that you can take the program to United World Colleges, not just in Montezuma, but even the one in South Africa where Ndaba's aunt, Ambassador Zinzi Mandela, went to, and where also Zenani went to, and also where the current matriarch of the Mandela family, Dr. Makaziwe Mandela, went to. So there seems to be a little bit of magic about this United World College. So we can get started there. And if you will, please engage her to take President Dan Porterfield and to take yourself and to hopefully take my old professor, Francis Fukuyama, who's written a fantastic book called Identity that he gave it to me about 2 months ago when Naomi facilitated me to go and visit him in Stanford. Yeah. Yeah, so he's a fantastic guy, and I hope if you can bring Francis Fukuyama, Dan Porterfield, and yourself to Montezuma, let's rock this process. As Americans say, let's rock this process. Yeah, thank you.
Ndaba, is there anything you would like to say in closing, sir?
You know, one of the most special things about my grandfather, as you all know, is the compassion that he had for people. Now, growing up with my grandfather, I met Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson, Bill Clinton, Muhammad Ali, the list goes on. But my grandfather treated those people the same way as he treated Mama Oli, who was our cook, as Mike, who was the driver, as Albert, who cleaned the garden. Because Nelson Mandela understood more than anybody that regardless of your gender, your age, or your history, that we all have the potential to achieve greatness. So please treat everybody with love and respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ndaba Mandela. Probably Ndaba didn't tell you the meaning of his name. Perhaps you can just say that.
News.
So Ndaba means news. So sometimes I say Ndaba, Ndaba. Mandela. And so I'm actually glad today because I'm also seeing my friend Scarlett and Bill. So it's good to see you. Thank you for visiting us in Nairobi, Kenya. And I think at one point, Scarlett came to Kenya. She's a lover of Africa. And it's not this.
She's one of the co-founders of Friends of Africa.
Exactly, which we thank you dearly for, and thank you for sponsoring for us to get a proclamation of Nelson Mandela Day. It's a big deal for us, but most importantly, I'd like to invite each and every one of you to visit South Africa and to visit the home of Nelson Mandela, which Ndaba is now the caretaker and the owner because it was rightfully passed on to him. So he has the keys to the house of Nelson Mandela. So I'd like you to take advantage of that and visit and continue supporting the work of Nelson Mandela. And secondly, I come from, we have a home in Nairobi and also in Kisumu in the Lake Victoria district. We welcome you to come there. And in South Africa, in Eastern Cape, in Africa, we say we have two homes, but your home where is your ancestral land is called home squared, meaning it's your real home. That everything can vanish in the big cities, but your real home is where your ancestors have been buried for millennia. So that happens to be, for me, in Kisumu, which is next to where also Barack Obama's father is buried. So I'd like to welcome you there any day, anytime you want to visit. And most importantly, I'm carrying a book called The Nelson Mandela Museum, a guide to the Long Walk to Freedom exhibition. I'll work very hard to try and bring this exhibition to the United States, and courtesy of the museum. But most importantly, if you're living and breathing, and you can still imagine, I'd like you to imagine that you can go to Ikunu. Ndaba can say it correctly.
Ekunu.
Ekunu. That's the resting place where our leader and founder Nelson Rolihlahla Dalibunga Madiba Mandela is resting, so that you can come and pay your respects. So welcome to South Africa. Welcome to Africa, the cradle of mankind.
Hilary and Dan, please stay for a South African song as a finale, and they'll get set up right away. And then if you could go to the front desk and you can buy a book, and they'll just be seated here and come back into the room, and we'll just have a single file so that they can sign the book. Hilary and Dan, you want to send us off? Ben, I'm sorry.
Oh, the sea is cold and the sky is gray. Look across the island into the bay. We are all islands, still comes the day we cross the burning water. Hasi mononga hasi monang humande latina la pahe kuna la pahe kuna hasi mononga hasi monang humande latina la pahe kuna la pahe kuna. Hasi goings across the sea. Broken silence is what I dream. Who has the words to close the distance between you and me? Hasimbonanga hasimbona humandela dina la pahekona la pahekona hasimbonanga hasimbona humandela dina la pahekona la pahekona hasimbonanga hasimbona humandela dina la pahekona la pahekona.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much.